In today's episode, I'm going to show you how to make a book pillow. It's basically a pillow with a pocket to hold a book, a wonderful gift for any age. This one is made with my Happy at Home fabric collection from Riley Blake Designs. Let's get started. I am in love with this 16.5-inch square grid ruler from Creative Grids. It's got amazing grip on the back, and it's exactly the size that I want to cut for this 16-inch pillow project. I'm going to be using a 16-inch Polyfill Premier pillow for this project from Fairfield. Since this is going to be a book pillow, and we need to have room for a good book to go into that pocket, I'm going to go 16.5 inches and then sew with a 1/2 inch seam instead of 16-inch with 1/2 inch seam. So what is wonderful about this is I just put this down exactly where I want it, and I'm just going to cut it the exact size. How often does that happen? It's like winning the quilting lottery. So look at that. It's the exact size we need. So we have the 16.5 inch. This is going to be on the front. Then we're going to do the pocket. So I also cut this to 16.5 inches from the panel. I want to have the Love Lives here on the back because this is going to be a reading pillow for a little girl, and I think she's going to love that because love definitely lives in her home. So we're going to use these yellow birds for the pocket and these blue dots for the pocket lining, the handle, and I'm going to do an optional double fold bias tape trim on the pocket just to give it a little extra. We're going to use that. I'm going to cut 10 inches by 16.5 inches from this yellow, but it is important because this is directional fabric to make sure you pay attention and that you do 16.5 inches wide. Now we're going to get this 10 inches. Oh, I've set myself up to practice being left-handed again. My mom and dad were both left-handed, so I'm sure my dad is looking down on me, very happy that I am embracing left-handedness. You guys right-handed or left-handed? I would love to know in the comments how many lefties we have out there. So that's going to be the front of the pocket. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the blue. Now the blue dots we're using for 3 different things. So we have to do 3 cuts with this. The first is going to be the 16.5 by 10 because it's going to be the lining for the pocket. Because this is a dot, it doesn't matter which direction you lay anything out, which is what makes it perfect to use for the bias tape. We're going to do straight edge bias tape and also for the fabric handle. So for the fabric handle, we need 4 by 8. And for the optional pocket bias tape, we need 2 inches by 16.5. I'm going to put the fusible fleece on the pocket lining fabric, just so if it ever gets a little bit rumpled or whatever, it's going to be on the inside of the pocket, and the fabric on the outside of the pocket is going to be super cute and good. It shouldn't be a huge problem, but you have the option of which side to use. So I'm going to take that option. And I like to use Pellon 987F fusible fleece. I just always keep a ton of it in my sewing room because I use it for zipper bags and lots of different fusible projects. Now, it says on the directions, you always want to follow the directions for whatever fusible fleece you use, that for a strong bond, you want to put a fabric on top. So you're putting the fused side up on the wrong side of this fabric. And then I'm going to put a pressing cloth down, and I'm going to spray it with water. They said to have it damp, so I'm going to get it quite wet or damp. And then you're going to put your iron on a wool setting, and then you're just going to press down and hold that, and that's going to give it a really strong bond with the fleece. And you're going to do the same thing, putting the 16 by 16 fusible fleece on the front pillow fabric. Okay, so we're going to set that aside. While we have the ironing board out, we're going to do our other ironing chores. So the next thing we need to iron is for our little handle. And this is 4 inches wide by 8 inches long. First, we're going to press it in half. So then you're going to open it up and you're going to press the raw edges right into that crease. Now, because this is a pretty short piece, I'm just going to finger press that, both sides in. If it was longer, I would be using the iron on both of these sides. But again, because it's short, we can do that. And then you're going to fold it in half. And now I just have to press that one more time. If you want to get nice, crisp folds, you can use a quilter's clapper or a tailor's clapper, which is just longer. And when you take the iron off, you're going to press down with this piece of wood, and it's grooved, so it's really easy to hold, and it absorbs some of the heat and it gives you a nice crisp fold. This is great for when you're pressing open little seams, especially on small quilt blocks, and also for projects like that. So then we're just going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch down that edge to get that closed. And then this is going to become the handle for our pillow, and it won't buckle like that once we sew it. Okay, one more thing to press. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing on this long piece. Because this one is a bit longer, I am going to press down each side, making sure that I don't press that center crease that we just made. And then we're going to fold it in half. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our pocket and we're going to put the right sides together. And you're going to pin or clip, and we are going to sew this top edge with a 1/2 inch seam. Now I have my pillow front fused to the fleece and my pillow pocket with the inside and the outside good to go. We just sewed that and then I pressed that. And you can keep it simple like this, and this is what it would look like. You just stitch across here, but I have decided that I do want to add a little bit of trim. You're going to place the double fold bias tape down, and then you're going to put this sewn and pressed edge right in that crease, and you're going to line up the sides. Sometimes I make the bias tape a little bit longer so that I don't have to be so precise lining it up. And then I just trim it at this point. But because we already had that fabric that was cut exactly 16.5 inches for the inside of the pocket lining, it was just really easy to make it the same size. Whenever you're doing a bias tape, always turn it over when you get down a little bit and just double check that you're getting the other side. Because the worst thing is when you get all the way done and you realize you haven't caught both sides of that bias tape. I'm going to prepare to tack the handle onto the pillow front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in half and find the center. And I'm just going to put a pin in there so I know where that center is. We're just going to put this evenly from the center of the pillow. So the further apart you put it, the smaller the handle is. The closer together you put it, it's going to be a skinny handle, but it will come up more. So you can just decide based on the size of the person's hands that you are giving this to. And I'm going to put it 1 inch on either side of center. Pin that, and then we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew back and forth across both of these with 1/4 inch from the edge, because when we sew the whole pillow together, we are going to be using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so you won't even see that. But we want to make sure this gets tacked on and stays in place and is nice and sturdy. And I have pinned the pocket onto the pillow front. So we're just basting this to make sure the pocket and the front stay in place when we sew everything together. So I'm going to do it really close to the edge, about 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to do a longer stitch length. Because again, this is just keeping it in place for the real sewing that we're going to do shortly. Because I wanted to use this block for the back of the pillow, I'm not doing an envelope pillow, which a lot of people do. And that basically means on the back of the pillow, you would have 2 pieces of fabric that overlap. So you just shove the pillow in there, but you would be able to take the cover off if you needed to wash it or something like that. We are forgoing that because I just really, really want this on the back. So we are going to leave a big space in the bottom open when we sew it. We're going to put the pillow in and we're going to sew that closed by hand. The next thing we need to do is we're going to just flatten that handle because we want this to be as flat as possible. And we're going to put the back, so we're doing right sides together, lining up all the edges, and we're going to pin all the way around. Now I'm also going to do a clip on each side where the pocket overlaps because I want to make sure that I double stitch over those 2 sections to reinforce them, since it will be opened and closed to add a book in that area. So I want to make sure that that is going to be nice and secure. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to put a clip. Just my clips are often to remind me, ooh, this is an important spot to pay attention to if I'm not clipping all the way around. So I'm going to do a clip here to let me know where to stop for my opening. And I'm going to do this gold one for where I'm going to start. So I'm going to keep this much open for turning and inserting the pillow form. Okay, I think we have that pinned pretty well. Now I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew all the way around, leaving this much open using a 1/2 inch seam. So I decided to go with the Premier Pillow Form from Fairfield, the 16-inch, because it's a little bit more solid. The basic ones were super fluffy, and I thought for a pillow that you're going to put a book in and maybe put on your lap to hold the book, you want something a little bit more firm. So that's why I decided to go with this one. Now we are going to turn the pillow right side out. Put my fingers in there, push out the corners. Now, if you want your corners pushed out a little bit more, which isn't as important on a pillow because it's not going to be like, like a quilt where it's totally flat, you can use a turning tool. And once you do it as much as you can with your fingers, you're just going to gently press that. Don't be too forceful, because if you are, you may see it come right through your corner, and then you're going to have to go fix that seam. All right, so that's going to be the back. That's going to be the front. Now we have to get this big pillow into this hole. I just fold it in half, put it in, and that doesn't look good, does it? That's because it's not flattened in there. So now you just need to manipulate the pillow so that the pillow corners go into the corners that you sewed and get it nice and flat. This is also why I make the case a tiny bit bigger than many people do, because I feel like it's still a really good fit. And it looks good, and I don't feel like I'm going to be straining those seams too much. So that's the front. The book's going to go in there. That's the back. Now the only issue we have is right here. We need to get this sewn together. So we basically are folding that fabric so that we know where we want to do our ladder stitch, also called a blind stitch or an invisible stitch, to sew that pillow right into there without being able to see the stitching. We could put it on the sewing machine, but then it would have a little bit of a bubble. And I feel like for this kind of a project that's going to be on someone's lap, often with this side facing them, it is worth the effort to do a little bit of hand sewing. So now I'm going to get my thread and I'm going to show you how to do this ladder stitch, and then we will be done. Now I have taken a piece of white thread and doubled it and put a knot at the end. You don't want to make it so long that it ends up getting tangled. This is pretty long. We're going to hope that it works. Sometimes it's better to use two pieces if you have a really long section than have it get too tangled and knotted, but we'll see how it goes. I always start, I'm right-handed. We've talked about this a couple of times so far. I always start on the left because I find it an easier angle. What we're going to do is we're going to take our needle and we're going to go underneath that folded over part. And we're going to go slightly beyond where the stitching ends. And we're going to come up right in that brown part. So my needle is basically in the folded section, coming up at the fold. And I'm going to pull that, and I'm going to make sure that that knot is going to hold. If your knot is too small, it will come through. So give it a little bit of a tug and make sure that's going to hold. Now I turn it around, because now we want to go this way and close the opening. So now what you're going to do is you're going to go straight across. So it's come out here. You're going to go straight across, put your needle in basically in the fold of the yellow side, go down 1/8 to 1/4 inch and have it come out. And you want to be pinching it together as you go, just so you get a nice tight thing. Now you're going to do it the opposite way. You're going to come straight across, and you're going to go into the fold of the brown about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch. And you're just going to keep doing that. You're going to go straight across and down. And that is why it's often called a ladder stitch, because if you think about it, you're basically building a ladder with an invisible rung because you're pulling it tight. But you're going straight up those seams, and you're just going to keep doing that until it's closed. And then you just really don't see it. So if we pull this apart, you can see how you're getting straight stitches that go across. But when you're pulling it tight, they disappear, and you're going to have a beautiful finished look for this pillow. You're just going to keep going until you get to the end. Okay, I stitched all the way across. Look how good that looks. You can't see it. So now the way to finish it is you're going to go across one last time, but you're not really going to catch very much. You're not going to go at the 1/8 to 1/4 inch, just a little bit. You're going to put your thumb in there so that the loop doesn't pull all the way through. Then you're going to double back and put your needle through that loop and tie that knot. You can do a second one if you want to, but there's not really going to be any strain on this. So I usually just do one if it feels like it's right down there. And then I just shove my needle in and kind of press my pillow together and angle it out like that. Just pull that thread through. Then I tug on it a little bit, push down, and then I just trim it. And now the tail of the thread is going to be inside the pillow. Now, you're just going to mush it again a little bit. Get that pillow form nice and formed, and there is the back. And there is the front with a pocket for a book. So that's all we need. With this size, you could put any kind of a book. You could put a coloring book in there and some pencils. You could put a book that you're reading. You could put 2 of those things in there. Lots of possibilities and a cute little handle to carry it around.